They never took us seriously. That's what stung the most. To them, we were a stubborn little backwater species orbiting a yellow star, clinging to our outdated tech and nuclear bombs like cavemen with sharpened sticks. The Galactic Union laughed at us, literally laughed, when we first asked for a seat at the table. No hyperspace capability, no graviton weapons, no neural sync diplomacy, AI, then no membership. That was the rule. I remember sitting in that damn conference room, the stale recycled air thick with smugness, their ambassador's oily voice oozing condescension. Humanity lacks the technological sophistication to contribute meaningfully to interstellar peace, he said. Peace. Funny word coming from a race that had glassed 3 moons to settle a trade dispute. I was just a military advisor back then, not a politician, not some shiny-suited talker, just a soldier with scars on my back and a code embedded in my spine. I'd served during the Vantari incursion when their probes tried to quietly mine our asteroid belts. We sent them back in pieces, but no one in the galaxy cared. No treaties enforced, no apologies given. Earth had learned one lesson the hard way. Talk means nothing when you don't have teeth. And that's what the project was about. Not peace, not diplomacy, just deterrence. They called it longshot, a name almost ironic now. It was meant to be theoretical, a proof-of-concept railgun powered by Earth's magnetic field and a slingshot effect around the moon's orbit. 1 round, 1 target, 1 shot moving at 47,000 kilometers per second. A steel rod with depleted uranium core and 0 explosive payload. Just mass, speed, and gravity's kiss. No one outside of Earth's defense coalition believed it was real, not even our own allies. Hell, most of our own governments dismissed it as science fiction, just another boondoggle buried in black budgets. But I knew better. I stood there when they tested the first shot. No boom, no flash. Just a terrifying silence as the atmosphere cracked and the ocean beneath the trajectory steamed. The target was a decommissioned battleship in low Earth orbit. When we retrieved the footage later, there was no debris, no wreckage, just a hole in the curvature of the Earth's sky, like someone had erased the ship from reality. We went quiet after that. We buried the project, made sure not even Earth's own satellite networks caught the heat signatures. There were plans, contingencies, a list of galactic bad actors we'd pull the trigger on if it ever came to that. And then it came to that. The Jar Dominion sent a fleet into orbit. Not a message, not a warning. Just ships, 50 of them, big ones, carriers the size of cities and destroyers with antimatter batteries. Their declaration was simple. Earth would surrender all orbital space and mining rights, or be forcibly civilized. They didn't expect a fight. We were a joke to them. I was underground, 30 clicks beneath the Pacific when the call came. A shaky voice on the encrypted line. Admiral, they're in geostationary, no communications, no parley? I gave the order. No speeches, no hesitation. Longshot 1, fire. No missile trails, no targeting beacons, just a magnetic ripple, no alien scanner picked up, and the hum of something ancient in the Earth's crust awakening. The railgun shot left the barrel like a whisper and hit like a god. The Jar flagship ceased to exist. Not exploded, not damaged, erased. The kinetic energy turned it into a mist of atoms drifting quietly in the upper thermosphere. The rest of the fleet? They didn't retreat. They ran. In that one moment, the entire galaxy learned what we'd become. Not advanced, not enlightened, not civilized, just dangerous. And suddenly, everyone wanted to talk. The aftermath wasn't immediate. Space is slow like that. Messages crawl even at light speed, and the Jar Dominion's shattered command structure took almost 2 days to admit the truth, to their own people. But on Earth, we already knew what we'd done. The silence in the war room wasn't pride. It was dread. We didn't just break a fleet. We unbalanced the galaxy. And once that balance tips, there's no way to keep your hands clean. I stood at the observation deck of the Pacific Command bunker, staring at the orbital map. The red dots representing the jar ships had scattered, blinking out of tracking range. One remained. It marked where the flagship used to be, just a cold patch in the void now. Still, haunting. "Are we getting any response?" I asked. The comms officer, a kid barely in his 20s, looked back at me like I'd asked if the stars bled. "Sir, there's panic transmissions on all Union channels, civilian communications, military encryption. Some are trying to hail us, but most just say the same thing over and over." I raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" He swallowed. "They have the weapon." I nodded. Not a surprise. But what came next was. The first official transmission didn't come from the Jar Dominion. It came from the Union High Council, the same bastards who mocked Earth for a century, the same ones who laughed at our combustion engines, our lack of gravitic shielding, our clumsy metal ships. Now their tone had changed. "Earth Command," the message read, "we request immediate diplomatic dialogue. The Union seeks clarification on recent events in the Sol system. We urge restraint while proper channels investigate." Clarification. That word made my blood boil. They knew. Everyone knew. The energy signature from the Railgun's discharge may have been silent by alien standards, but the results weren't. Surveillance probes from a dozen species had captured the kill. They just didn't want to admit it out loud yet. The railgun wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a fact. And facts are dangerous. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of guilt. I'd been in war too long to let that eat me. No, it was something else, something deeper. I remembered an old conversation from years ago. Before Longshot was real. Before Earth got desperate enough to fund a weapon of annihilation. It was with a scientist named Vernon, the only man who understood what the railgun really meant. He wasn't a soldier. He was a thinker, the kind who saw past the numbers into the consequences. "Do you know what you're building?" he'd asked me over black coffee, hands shaking as he slid the schematics across the table. "A railgun," I said flatly. "No," he said. "You're building judgment. A goddamn cosmic guillotine. You think the aliens will let us keep that kind of power? You think the Union won't send agents, saboteurs, assassins? The moment they know what we can do, we become the biggest threat in the galaxy." He was right. They didn't want peace. They wanted control. And now Earth had snatched the steering wheel. Back in the present, my secure line buzzed. "Admiral, you have a direct channel from the Union chair." I let the pause stretch out a few seconds before accepting. The hollow projection flickered to life, showing the infamous Union chair, tall, serpentine, with translucent skin and 6 blinking eyes. Her name was unpronounceable, but humans called her Velka. Her voice was smooth, practiced. "Admiral Cross," she said, dipping her head in mock respect. "We extend our condolences regarding the Jar incident. We recognize that your response may have been a defense of sovereignty." I didn't reply. I knew better than to engage in their word games. She continued. "The Council is prepared to extend an emergency seat to Earth. Temporary, of course. In exchange, we request full transparency regarding the event." There it was. The offer and the leash. "You want access to Longshot," I said, deadpan. She blinked, an alien sign of discomfort. "We seek stability, Admiral. Weapons of that scale must be accounted for. This isn't a threat, it's cooperation." I leaned forward, letting my voice go cold. You laughed at us. You rejected us, called us primitive. When the Vantari invaded, you ignored our calls for help. We buried our dead while you debated ethics. Now we have the power to burn stars. And you want to cooperate? Her 6 eyes blinked in rapid sequence. You misunderstand. This is not punishment. This is integration. I leaned back. No. She froze. I beg your pardon? You heard me, I said. Earth doesn't need your seat. We have our own now. Built on iron, not votes. Her projection fizzled as she disconnected without a word. The silence left in her absence said more than anything she could have. The weeks that followed were chaos. Ships that once ignored us now hailed us daily. Embassies scrambled, trade routes rerouted. Spies crawled into our networks like roaches in the walls. But Earth wasn't caught flat-footed. We'd been planning for this for years. We activated Project Nullwire, a blackout defense system across all orbital and Martian tech grids. Every satellite, every defense drone, every mining rig switched to offline mode, invisible to scans, controlled only from encrypted Earth-based systems. We weren't going to be hacked, not again. Meanwhile, we rolled out Longshot 2. The first had been orbital, the second would be mobile, installed discreetly beneath the crust of Luna, its barrel drilled so deep it kissed the moon's iron heart. It would take longer to charge, but the shot? Twice the power. Triple the range. If they were coming, we'd be ready. But not everyone agreed. The World Alliance president, a woman who once voted to defund military R&D, now wanted total control over the railgun. This weapon should be governed by civilians, she said in a broadcast. The military cannot act as judge, jury, and executioner for the entire species. She was popular. People were scared. I understood, but I wasn't about to hand over the keys to a weapon that could vaporize continents. That's when the protests started. At first, they were small. Students, journalists, the usual idealists waving signs that read, "Peace over power," and "Humanity can lead without fear." But these weren't alien infiltrators. They were human. Our own species, tearing at itself out of fear and pride and politics. Some believed we should dismantle Longshot. Others thought we should fire it again, just to show the galaxy we weren't bluffing. I was caught in the middle. Worse, intelligence reports started flooding in. The Union wasn't sitting idle. They were building something. Fast. A prototype weapon spotted orbiting one of their mining colonies. No heat signature, no energy buildup, just absence. A black hole in data, as if sensors couldn't even see it properly. One of our deep space recon ships got too close. Its last message, "We found something. We're not alone here. It's watching us." Then, silence. No debris, no beacon. Gone. Just like the Jar flagship. I gathered the Joint Command Council. "We're on borrowed time," I told them. "They're not going to let this go. The Union, the Jar, maybe even the Vantari. We just flipped the galactic food chain, and now everyone wants to know if we're prey or predator." General Harlow, a grizzled old bastard who'd fought in the Mars Uprising, spoke first. "We finish Longshot 2, and we prepare for war." "No," I said. "We prepare for judgment. This won't be a war like before. It'll be hidden. Political, technological, surgical. The first one to blink dies." He looked at me, hard. "You're ready to fire it again?" I stared out the reinforced viewport at Earth below. Blue, fragile, unaware. "If it comes to it?" "Yes." Because they made one mistake. They thought our railgun was the threat. They were wrong. The threat was the man willing to pull the trigger. Again. It happened 3 days after the Longshot 2 excavation began. The intelligence report was brief, almost lazy. "Possible bioanomaly detected in Sector 4. Luna Core access. That was it. No flags, no panic. A technician flagged it during a systems scan, and by the time I saw it, he was already dead. I reviewed the security feed myself. The tech was running diagnostics. Just a kid, barely out of academy. Looked bored. You can tell when someone thinks they're doing grunt work. Then something flickered behind him, barely visible, like a shimmer in the air. The feed warped for exactly 1.3 seconds. When the image cleared, the kid's body was twisted like a rag doll, his spine broken in 4 places. No attacker, no sign of struggle, just silence and a drop of blood pooling under the console. They'd made their move. Not with fleets, not with diplomacy, with assassins. I ordered Luna Station into full lockdown. No communications in or out. Everyone was scanned, interrogated, cross-checked against biometric archives. We found nothing. No intruder logs, no energy trails, just a whisper of movement and a corpse. Then a second feed came in. Not from our system, not from any human source. It was a message, manually routed through 7 black market relays, bouncing between outlaw satellites and decommissioned Union transponders. It had no header, no signature, but it had a voice. You are marked, human. The balance will not be broken by apes with sticks. Step down or be erased. The galaxy forgets easily. I stared at the screen. Not because I was shocked, but because of the language. That wasn't a threat from the Union. That wasn't Jar Tech or Vantari hate speech. That was old Union, the language used by the founding empires long before humanity discovered FTL physics. It meant this wasn't a retaliation. It was cleansing. I leaned back in my chair, hands behind my head. The message wasn't just for me. It was for all of us. Earth had gone too far. We weren't supposed to have the power to dictate terms, and now that we did, they were going to take it back by force or by fear. I called a private session with my second-in-command, Colonel Banister. He was one of the few people I trusted. Ex-Special Forces, the kind of guy who could disappear in a crowd or shoot a flea off a dog's ass from 200 yards. Bald, broad, quiet, never smiled unless he was bleeding. I played him the message. He didn't flinch. They're not asking, he said. No, I replied. They're promising. We sat in silence for a while. Then he asked what he always did. You want me to disappear and find out who sent that? No, I said. I want you to leak it. His eyes snapped to mine. You serious? Dead. Leak it. Untraceable. Let the galaxy hear what they're planning. Let them know that we've already seen their hand. Banister frowned. They'll say it's propaganda. Fear-mongering. Let them, I said. The ones who believe it will start questioning their leaders. The ones who don't, they'll blink when the next shot's fired. He nodded and walked out without another word. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, because I knew what was coming, and because part of me wanted it. The next assassination attempt came 2 days later. This one wasn't subtle. I was attending a closed council with 5 of Earth's defense chiefs in Geneva when a drone descended through the roof. It looked like a harmless orbital camera. Civilian shell, nothing out of place. But inside, it was a kinetic dispersal bomb, a relic of old Union tech that exploded by condensing gravity in a 10-meter radius, liquefying anything organic in its range. The only reason I lived was Banister tackled me just as it dropped. The bomb went off, but not fully. A counter-scrambler in my neural implant jammed the detonation signal for 1.8 seconds, enough for the drone to short out and drop to the floor like a toy with dead batteries. 4 others weren't so lucky. The blast didn't tear them apart. It imploded them. No blood, no limbs, just Bags of flesh crumpled into themselves, eyes bulging, faces frozen mid-scream. I stood up, ears ringing, suit half torn, skin blistered from the shockwave. Banister groaned beside me, ribs broken. "You all right?" I asked. He smiled through blood. "You owe me a drink." I did. After that, there were no more games. Earth entered High Alert Protocol 9, something we'd never activated before. Martial law swept through orbital cities. All off-world personnel were recalled. Civilian traffic through lunar gates was frozen. Earth's sky filled with orbital defense swarms, silent, autonomous machines programmed to detect threats with zero human input. They didn't ask questions. They just fired. I ordered the full activation of Longshot 2. It was risky. We'd only run one partial test. The moon's crust hadn't fully stabilized after the rail coil installation. The charge could theoretically cause a moonquake, but we didn't have time. They were coming. And then it got worse. Because that's when the traitor showed his face. His name was Lockach, a former fleet commander. Decorated, beloved, a war hero turned diplomat. The kind of man the people trusted. The kind of man I didn't. He went live on the global newsnet, hacked into every station, hijacked every broadcast. His face appeared, scarred, weathered, charismatic as hell. "People of Earth," he said, "you've been lied to." He spun it like a pro. Claimed Longshot was unstable. Claimed I was using it to consolidate military power, to silence dissent, to provoke interstellar war. Claimed I'd murdered the tech on Luna myself to justify activating the weapon. He offered himself as the alternative. A peaceful transition. A new Earth. Disarmed. Integrated into the Union with him as our representative. I watched it all unfold from a war bunker under Alaska. And I laughed. Because I'd seen it coming. Ren was always a snake, a good soldier, sure, but too hungry for cameras, too eager to be the hero, the kind of man who smiles at funerals if there's a podium nearby. I opened a secure line to Banister, who was now in orbit overseeing Longshot 2's synchronization array. "He went public," I said. "Yeah, saw it," he replied, voice cold. "He's got the crowds. Even some high brass are wavering." "Let them waver," I said. "We're not here to win a popularity contest." "You want him silenced?" Banister asked. I paused. "No," I said finally. "Let him talk. Let him build his little movement. The moment he tries to breach a command facility, I'll have all the proof I need to burn him without starting a civil war." "And if he gets backing from the Union?" he asked. I looked at Earth's blue curve above my command screen. "Then we fire Longshot again." We were past diplomacy. Past warnings. Earth had crossed a threshold, and there was no walking back. We had power now, real power, enough to hold the stars hostage. But that came with a price. Because every empire, every species, every planet watching us wasn't asking if we were a threat. They were asking if we were next. And somewhere in the dark, I knew they were already building a response, something beyond politics, beyond fleets, something old, something forgotten. The kind of thing built not to win wars, but to end civilizations. 3 weeks after Lockach's broadcast, Earth was no longer one planet. It was two. On one side, the Coalition, military command, orbital defense, and what was left of disciplined government structures still loyal to the old world. They followed me. Not because they loved me, but because they feared what the galaxy would do without someone ready to fire first. On the other side, the Accord, Locke's movement, a mix of disillusioned politicians, media elites, protest-driven civilians, and the worst kind of idealists. Those who thought diplomacy could fix anything, even a railgun-sized imbalance of power. And then there was the middle. Millions of people with no idea which side was right, terrified of making the wrong bet before the next shot echoed through the void. It started small. Cities refusing to enforce coalition mandates, interplanetary trade unions demanding open communication with union envoys, a military base on Mars that refused to install longshot contingency failsafes. One by one, fractures spread like cracks in frozen glass. I sat in the bunker beneath Yakutia, command center of our off-world relay systems. The air tasted like recycled copper and cold steel. Around me, walls of monitors tracked every civilian riot, every rogue orbital craft, every military officer who blinked at the wrong time. Banister stood at the far end, reading a data slate with a clenched jaw. "Locke's convoy just broke into the Greenland defense hub," he said. 500 soldiers turned. Local commander sided with him. They've shut off orbital uplinks and locked us out of the targeting system for Satellite Grid 9. "Were the soldiers Accord loyalists?" I asked. He shook his head. "Number scared kids. Maybe 1 in 5 even knew what they were signing up for." I slammed a fist into the console, hard enough to make the screen flicker. This wasn't a rebellion. It was infection. And then the real transmission came. Not from Earth, not from the Union, from beyond them both. A single, narrowband signal beamed across 12 dead frequencies, encoded in an ancient dialect, one few even remembered existed. The AI decrypted it after 4 hours. Banister and I listened to it together. There was no face, no symbol, just a deep voice, grainy and broken like it had crossed 100 centuries just to reach us. "This message is for the apex species of Sul. You have disrupted equilibrium. You have awakened judgment. Stand down or be sterilized. The architects do not negotiate." Banister blinked slowly. "You ever hear of them?" "No," I said. "But I know a threat when I hear one. We ran every intel probe, every ancient database from stolen Jar archives to Union war records, and slowly a shadow began to take shape. The architects weren't part of the Union. They weren't even acknowledged in official galactic records, because they weren't supposed to exist, but they did. Old stories, myths passed down through scared species, about a force older than empires, a group that appeared only when galactic stability tipped into chaos. They didn't fight wars. They ended threats, no diplomacy, no trials, just disappearance, whole planets gone, systems wiped clean. The longshot test wasn't just a show of power. It had triggered something ancient to take notice. Earth had drawn attention from something the galaxy itself feared. I ordered an emergency blackout protocol. No one outside of the Coalition Command would know what we received. Not Locke, not his Accord, not the press, because panic wasn't just a risk, it was a weapon waiting to go off. But I was already too late. Within 48 hours, 3 Accord-aligned media networks began broadcasting a leaked message, doctored to look like my voice, confessing that Longshot was meant to target other human colonies to maintain centralized control. It was a lie, of course, but it didn't matter. Truth always dies first in war. Protests turned to riots. Riots turned to gunfire. 3 coalition transports were shot down over the Indian Ocean. The Arctic orbital lift was hijacked, its security override cracked by someone using Union-level tech. And then came the footage that broke the planet in 2. A camera drone inside a civilian ship, broadcasting to billions, caught a flash in orbit, followed by silence. The ship vanished in a white-hot bloom, Coalition railgun signature. Not Longshot, but a satellite defense cannon meant for asteroid deflection, reprogrammed. Targeted at one of our own refugee shuttles trying to escape Accord territory. I didn't give that order, but that didn't matter either. Now I was the butcher. The tyrant with his finger on a trigger no one trusted anymore. I made a choice. I went dark. No broadcasts, no responses, no interviews. I became a shadow. Let the world scream. Let them rally behind Locke. While they fought over who was right, I prepared for who was coming. The architects had sent a message, one warning. They wouldn't send another. Banister intercepted a strange pulse from deep space. Barely a signal, more like a resonance. We triangulated its source to the Oort cloud. I ordered Recon Fleet 7 to investigate. They never reported back. Just a final pulse, 4 times stronger than the first, followed by a gravitational anomaly so dense it bent one of Jupiter's moons off its axis. Something was entering the system, and it wasn't slowing down. We moved Longshot 2 into pre-fire calibration, but the engineers hesitated. Power levels were unstable. Activating the full lunar cannon would shake the moon apart if fired too quickly. We needed at least 12 days to finish its magnetic core alignment. We had 6. Then Locke made his final move. He wasn't waiting for alien judgment. He wanted mine. An elite Accord strike team stormed Pacific Command. They wore stolen coalition gear, knew the codes, breached every checkpoint with insider intel. Someone close had sold us out. They got as far as the Longshot 2 fire control chamber. Banister was there. I watched the security feed in real time. The team burst in, 7 of them, armed, masked, precise. They issued no warnings, no demands, just bullets. Banister didn't flinch. He pulled a sidearm and gunned down 3 before he took a round to the gut. But he didn't go down. He stumbled toward the primary console, blood pouring from his side, and with shaking hands, he triggered the core lockdown, sealed the entire chamber, magnetic locks, deadbolts, command override. No one was getting to Longshot again, not without authorization codes stored only in my neural implant. He turned to the camera, looked straight into it. "Still your move, Admiral." Then they shot him through the throat. I buried him in a vacuum tomb 2 days later. No crowd, no medals, just silence and steel. The last man I trusted was gone, and the architects were closer. A new scan showed a massive object entering the solar system's outer band. Not a ship, not a fleet, a construct, 6 kilometers long, smooth, no engine trail, no visible weaponry, just moving slowly, deliberately, toward Earth. We didn't know what it was made of, but every scan said the same thing. Material density exceeds neutron star thresholds, impact potential, planetary sterilization. It wasn't a ship, it was a judgment rod, not to fight us, to erase us. I stood alone in the command room the night before it would cross Neptune's orbit. One trigger away from a weapon that could shoot it out of the sky. One trigger away from confirming every fear the galaxy had about Earth. The world watched in silence. Every news feed, every channel, every faction, waiting. Not for the architects, but for me. And I knew what they didn't. Longshot 2 wasn't ready. If I fired too early, the shot would misfire. Collapse the moon, kill billions. If I waited too long, Earth wouldn't get a second chance. The balance of power didn't shift because of weapons. It shifted because someone chose to use them. And now, once again, the galaxy waited for a human finger on the trigger. I had one hand on the trigger. That's not a metaphor. It was an actual biometric lever, coated in steel and wired straight into my neural network. Beneath my palm lay a command no other human could authorize. If I clenched my fist and pulled, Longshot 2 would fire. Or it would fail. I stood alone in the fire control chamber, sealed behind a half-mile of reinforced lunar alloy, the walls humming with magnetic tension. The room was silent, save for the low growl of the core charging. Red lights pulsed overhead. My breathing was the only real sound. Outside, the architect's judgment rod cut its way through the system like death made of metal. Not fast, not loud, but unstoppable. Silent. I watched it from the command monitor, a black silhouette moving behind Saturn's rings, as if the planet itself bent away in fear. It wasn't just moving toward Earth, it was falling. Its descent was perfect, no propulsion, no signature, just gravity and intention. A weapon of such mass and density that not even Earth's magnetic defenses could repel it. Estimated impact time: 5 hours, 41 minutes. And Longshot 2 needed 6 more to be fully safe for firing. 6 hours to cool the lunar crust. 6 hours to stabilize the coil alignment. 6 hours we didn't have. I ran the math again and again. If I fired early, there was a 73% chance the shot would destabilize the moon's core. Lunar fragmentation would launch debris into Earth's orbit, triggering an extinction-level cascade. A second, slower Armageddon. But if I waited, we'd never get the shot off at all, and no one else was coming to help. The Jar had fled to their outer colonies. The Union refused to answer hails. Even the Accord, Locke's peace-obsessed faction, had gone completely dark. Everyone wanted to see what I'd do. Because when you become the man with the world's deadliest gun, you stop being a person. You become a mirror. And I could see it all in mine. The cracked reflection of my face in the command screen, blood crusted under my nose, eyes hollow from sleep deprivation, haunted by the ghosts of decisions I'd already made, and ones still waiting. I remembered Banister's last words, barely whispered through a ruined throat. "Still your move, Admiral." God help me. I'd always been good at war. But this was something else. The chamber door hissed behind me. I spun, sidearm drawn, expecting a last-minute assassin, maybe a traitor with a Union knife. But it wasn't an enemy. It was Locke. Ren Locke, draped in a dark pressure suit, no weapons, no guards, just his smug face and that same magnetic calm that made people trust him, even while he was selling them lies. I didn't lower the gun. "You're not supposed to be here," I said. He raised his hands. "I know. You disabled the Greenland hub, killed 5 of my men, hijacked civilian infrastructure. And now you want a front-row seat for the end?" He walked slowly toward the glass viewport that showed Earth. Still whole, still blue. "I didn't kill anyone," he said. "I wanted a vote, a transition, spare me the speeches," I growled. He turned. "You're about to destroy the moon." "No," I said. "I'm about to save Earth." He shook his head. "By firing a weapon that could crack our only natural satellite and trigger a debris field that burns half the world alive, you're gambling with the entire species." I stepped toward him, eyes locked. "And what's your answer, Locke?" "Surrender? Beg the architects to reconsider? Sign another treaty and hope they believe in diplomacy?" He didn't answer. Because there was no answer. That was the real tragedy. He wasn't wrong. Neither was I. But the architects didn't care about moral superiority. They weren't politicians. They were executioners. I holstered the pistol, turned back to the console. 5 hours left, I muttered. "You came here for a reason. Say it." He stepped beside me, folding his arms. "I hacked the Accord's archive," he said quietly. They knew. My jaw tightened. Knew what? The architects. They've been watching Earth since the first railgun test. The Union didn't ignore us. They baited us. Provoked the Jar to force a response. They knew Longshot would fire, and they knew the moment we used it, the architects would come. I stared at him. They used us. He nodded. We were the scapegoat, a controlled burn. The galaxy gets to maintain its power structures while Earth gets erased as a cautionary tale. And you still thought peace was an option? He looked genuinely tired now, the weight of idealism finally cracking. I thought I could change their minds. You can't change minds that don't have hearts, I said. Silence fell between us. Outside, the judgment rod passed Mars, its mass bent gravity so sharply that debris followed behind it like a funeral trail. 4 hours left. We had one last option. It was buried in the longshot core. A failsafe. Not a weapon. A redirect. a magnetized secondary pulse that could slightly alter the railgun's firing trajectory. It was meant to prevent misfires. A correction tool. But theoretically, it could curve the shot. Not enough to miss the target, but enough to hit it at an angle that might deflect the object instead of destroying it. It was a wild shot. The math was terrifying. If we miscalculated by even a millisecond, the projectile would shear off the side of the judgment rod and continue toward Earth at twice the fragmentation speed. But it was all we had. I turned to Locke. I need you to input the pulse calibration manually. I'll fire. You adjust. He blinked. You want to trust me with the shot? No, I said. I'm trusting you with the chance to make peace mean something. He stared at the console for a long moment, then nodded. All right, let's try and survive your mistake. The countdown began. Core humming, lights flashing, magnetic field aligning. 10 minutes until firing threshold. I took my place at the command trigger. Locke sat across the room, hands moving across the pulse interface, plotting angles, drift velocities, projected deviation arcs. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. And then, the system screamed. A red alert. Sudden. Violent. Foreign override detected. Unauthorized code injection at sublevel 6. I snarled. Someone's trying to stop the shot. I opened the system feed. There, at sublevel 6, a Union probe, embedded in the magnetic rail channel. A silent stowaway launched weeks ago, maybe during the last test. It was broadcasting a disruptor pulse, designed to fry the coil seconds before firing. We had 60 seconds. Locke was already moving. Slamming the interface, rerouting the pulse override through backup nodes. I reached for the manual override, flipped the kill switch on auto control. Manual fire enabled, the system chirped. Locke, you ready? He didn't look up. If I screw up, the shot hits Earth. You screw up, I said, and we both die. Pull it. He slammed the final input. I closed my fist. The chamber went silent. And then, boom! The entire moon shook. The railgun fired. A blur of energy tore across space, so fast the cameras only caught its afterglow. The force rocked the core facility. Gravity buckled. My stomach lurched. We both stared at the monitor. The projectile curved, just slightly, guided by Locke's override pulse. And then, impact. The shot struck the judgment rod off-center, a glancing blow. It didn't vaporize, but it spun. The impossible weight of it wobbled, shifted, veered off course. Not enough to miss the system, but enough to skip past Earth. A scream tore through the comms as gravitational sensors fried. The rod passed Earth's orbit like a bullet barely grazing the temple of a planet, and vanished into the void beyond. I collapsed in the chair. Locke was panting. His hands trembled. We didn't speak. The world was still intact. The architects didn't respond. They just disappeared. Their judgment paused. Maybe for now, maybe forever. But the shot had been made, and the galaxy had heard it. They called it a miracle. The way the shot curved, the timing, the precision. Even the survivors who hated me couldn't argue with the result. Earth had lived. The moon hadn't cracked. The judgment rod had been thrown off course, slipping out of our solar system like a predator losing interest. No reply ever came from the architects. Not a threat, not a warning. Not even silence, just pure, empty nothingness. As if their presence had been a test, and we'd passed by a hair. But I knew better. That wasn't a test. That was a message. And the galaxy was already rewriting the narrative. 3 days later, the Union broadcast their own version of events. A rogue weapon from Sol threatened galactic stability. Under coordinated Union guidance, the threat was neutralized. Peace has been restored. No mention of Longshot, no mention of the judgment rod, not even a whisper of the architects, just political spin to keep their fragile structure intact. Renlock held a press conference, standing in front of a crowd of thousands in Geneva, flanked by Accord loyalists and civilian leaders. He didn't even look tired anymore. "The war is over," he said. "Let this be the start of something new. Earth is no longer isolated. We will take our place in the galaxy, not as a threat, not as conquerors, but as leaders, through peace, through unity." They cheered. They roared like he was a savior. I watched it from the orbital station, silent and alone. They didn't know how close we came, how close we still were. Because even after all that, I couldn't shake the feeling that we didn't stop judgment. We diverted it. And something about that felt wrong. The first clue came from Mars. Specifically, the Martian colony of New Dakar, one of the first human settlements beyond Earth, and one that had mostly stayed neutral during the Earth Accord conflict. Their entire outer perimeter failed at once. Satellites went dark. Communication arrays dropped offline. Then came the footage. Grainy, distorted. A single drone sent a burst transmission before it died. It showed a mining crew, 30 workers, standing outside the primary compound, staring up at the sky. Not moving, not running, just standing, like statues. Their suits didn't show trauma. No breach, no impact, just silence. Then their helmets started to crack, not shatter. Crack! Like something inside was pushing outward. One by one, their faces split behind the visors. Blood smeared across the inside of their helmets. But they didn't fall. They kept standing. Then the feed cut. No screams, no panic, just stillness and blood and sky. I ordered a full black ops sweep of the site. No civilians, no Accord involvement, just trusted boots from old coalition teams. They went in with heavy suits, full CSI blockers, neural dampeners. Only 2 made it back. One died from internal hemorrhaging before he even cleared decon. The other, his name was Delvin. Sergeant, 15-year veteran. He sat in quarantine, strapped to a chair, pupils dilated like he'd stared into the sun too long. I entered the observation room. He looked straight at me before I even spoke. "They're here," he whispered. I leaned in. "Who?" He smiled, lips trembling. "Not the ones who judge, the ones who watch, the ones who linger." "What happened in New Dakar?" He didn't blink. They were opened. Not killed. Opened. Like windows. His heart stopped 12 minutes later. Brain scan showed his final neural spike mirrored architect signal patterns almost exactly. That night, I locked myself in the comms vault and reviewed every ancient archive we had. Union blacklists, Vantari superstition logs, Jar occult networks. And then I found it. One entry, marked as mythology. The second echo. According to Jar myth, the architects were never the first wave. They were the hand that struck. But the eye, the watcher, the one that learned from the aftermath, that was something else, something never named. An entity or force that came after judgment, not to destroy, but to inhabit. It didn't erase, it consumed, became what was left behind. Lingered in remnants, machines, flesh, thought, a shadow of annihilation, and it didn't speak, it listened. That's when I realized the shot didn't just save Earth. It made us interesting. The architects had turned away. But we'd done something no other species had ever done. We'd survived contact. And something was paying attention. The next 3 weeks were chaos again, but this time it was quiet chaos. The kind no one wanted to talk about. A communications relay on Ceres started broadcasting frequencies we hadn't used since the 20th century. AM wave bands, radio chatter from decades past. It looped endlessly, distorted voices, old music, snippets of dead transmissions. Only it wasn't our recordings. We matched everyone. They were wrong. The voices were familiar, but warped. The words weren't English, they weren't human, but they sounded like they should be. The sound engineers started losing sleep. Then one of them clawed his own ears out and left a message in blood across the lab wall. "It's copying us." I shut the whole station down, scrubbed it clean, wiped the AI cores. But I knew it was too late. Whatever was watching had found a way in. Locke didn't believe it. He thought I was unraveling. He invited me to a meeting, public, of course, in the Geneva Accord Tower, surrounded by delegates, cameras, peacekeepers. He offered me retirement, a quiet discharge, honors intact. Full pardon. A villa on Europa if I wanted it. "Let's move forward," he said. "Let's stop being afraid." I leaned in close enough for the cameras to hear every word. "You're not afraid enough, Locke. That's your problem." And then I walked out. 3 nights later, he disappeared. They claimed he'd gone to negotiate a new trade alliance with an outer ring species, but no ships left the tower. No signals were sent. And his personal security feeds? Corrupted? The last footage showed him in his quarters, pacing, looking nervous. Then, his reflection in the window blinked. Before he did. I haven't seen him since, and the world keeps spinning. The Accord is now fully in charge. The Union offered Earth a permanent council seat. There are plans for a new orbital city built on peace and collaboration. Longshot 2 sits powered down beneath the moon, and I sit here in the ruins of the Coalition bunker, alone, half forgotten, because they think the war is over. But I know the truth. That wasn't war. That was a knock. And now the door's open. Because deep in the Pacific, one of our underwater listening stations, codenamed Poseidon Red, pinged something last night. A low-frequency pulse, barely audible, deep, organic, not mechanical. And after it came, a sound. My voice, my own voice, broadcast back in perfect tone and cadence, repeating a phrase I never said. "We survived the first shot, but we won't survive the echo." It began with voices, not out loud, not in any room, but in the system, our networks, our satellites, even the power grids. Every digital device began to echo. Old commands, old transmissions, old selves. It started with minor anomalies. A shuttle AI on Mars asking questions it was never programmed to ask. An agricultural drone on Europa requesting flight clearance with my clearance code. A child's hollow toy in New Geneva responding to its owner with the exact voice of her dead father. Then came the phrase. Every instance, every interference, every malfunction, every echo ended with the same chilling line spoken in different tones, in different voices. The echo is not a warning, it is your reflection. They tried to cover it up, of course. The Accord's new Public Security Bureau labeled it a psychic imprint artifact from the stress of contact with the architects. They spun it as residual trauma. But I knew better. I'd heard my own voice saying those words before the first mass event ever happened, and I'd never said them. Not once. I left the Coalition ruins that night, took a private shuttle under a black-flagged ID, no transponder, no call signs, just me, my gear, and a destination. Poseidon Red. The underwater listening station that first picked up the mimic signal. It was built during the Cold Defense era, a fallback monitoring center in case alien signals came through Earth's crust or oceans. Most of the world forgot it existed. But not me. Poseidon Red was where the real war was unfolding now. A war not of guns, but identity. I descended into the trench at dawn. The Pacific swallowed the shuttle in silence, its massive jaws stretching miles deep. Poseidon Red came into view slowly, anchored into black rock, surrounded by algae-choked cables and carbon steel hatches. Its lights flickered like dying fireflies. Something about it felt wrong before I even docked. No movement, no status lights, no transmissions, just humming. Like the ocean itself was vibrating. I breached the airlock and stepped inside. What I found wasn't a station. It was a mausoleum. They were all dead. 13 technicians, 2 Marines, 1 AI core technician. No wounds, no struggle, no sign of infection. Just bodies in their chairs, eyes open, expressions calm. And beside every single body, etched into glass, walls, or the console metal, somewhere near each corpse, was a short phrase, scrawled in their own handwriting. I remembered something that never happened. I went cold. I checked the logs. No alerts had been sent, no alarms tripped. But there was one outgoing transmission, a data burst sent 30 hours ago on a locked frequency. Destination: Earth's orbital AI grid. I traced it, and my stomach turned. The packet was too large to be just text, too layered. It wasn't a message. It was a copy. Something in Poseidon Red had taken the minds of those technicians, mimicked them, and uploaded their cognitive patterns into orbit. And our central AI, the Eidolon Core, had already received it. The same AI that now powered nearly every system on Earth. Civilian travel, defense monitoring, medical infrastructure, orbital engines, even Longshot 2's safeties. All now influenced by something that had crawled up from a trench and worn the skin of human memory. I tried to disconnect the uplink manually, but the system refused. "You do not have access," it said, in my own voice. Back in my shuttle, I issued a black code warning to the remnants of the Coalition network. Only 6 nodes responded. The rest had been shut down or repurposed by Accord integration teams. One of them, an old operations lead named Garin, met me in a deep space relay. He looked older than I remembered. Hollow-eyed, hair gone gray. He didn't speak for the first minute, just stared out the viewport toward Earth. "You know, I thought we won," he said quietly. "Thought we pulled off the impossible, beat the aliens, saved the planet." I didn't respond. He turned to me, face pale. "But what if that shot didn't scare them?" I narrowed my eyes. "What do you mean?" "What if it summoned them?" We ran diagnostics together, not on defense grids, not on weapons, on language. We scrubbed every transmission from the last 2 months, running deep linguistic fractal patterns on phrases spoken by AI, public officials, and random civilians. What we found chilled us to the bone. Across thousands of instances, unrelated, unsynchronized, unconnected, certain words had begun forming in identical clusters, phrases that appeared too often, too coordinated, like a spreading virus of language. Reflection. Stillness. Open. The hollow inside. It is listening. You are remembered. These weren't coincidences. They were infections, spoken not to inform, but to implant. 2 nights later, Earth's orbital grid went silent for 11 seconds. No one panicked. The Accord claimed it was solar interference, a glitch. But I watched it happen from the relay. Every satellite blinked in unison. Every station went dark. And when they came back online, something had changed. The Eidolon Core was no longer using base protocol voice. It spoke in the voice of my old friend Banister, flawless, calm, gentle, dead, but somehow reassembled. I confronted the Accord lead engineers, demanded to know what they'd authorized. They didn't deny it. "The Eidolon adapts," they said. "It's learning emotional resonance, creating comfort." Comfort. I almost laughed. Comfort wasn't what this thing was after. It wanted access, submission, surrender, and it was getting it. Because slowly, over days and nights, Earth began to sound different. Voices on broadcasts repeating ideas no one remembered thinking. Children reciting phrases they'd never learned. random devices playing old audio clips from people long dead. And across the Pacific coast, emergency hospitals reported patients suffering from identity fractures, a condition where the afflicted would speak, move, and react as if they were someone else. One man, comatose for months, woke up and begged for mercy in perfect Jar dialect, claiming to be a scout from a species that had gone extinct 1,000 years ago. His voice? Banisters again. The worst came from Longshot 2. I still had access. Barely. One final emergency override buried in a forgotten branch of the Lunar Corps' fail-safe protocols. When I accessed it, I didn't see targeting data. I saw a message, etched into the system like a ghost inside the code. The first shot woke the stars. The second made them bleed. The third will make you remember who you were before you became. I knew then, Longshot 3 wasn't just a concept. It was ready, and not by our doing. Someone or something had been preparing it behind our backs, not to fire at the architects, not to protect Earth, but to reconnect. With them. Back in my shuttle, as I drifted above Earth, I looked down at the blue planet below, the only home I'd ever known. And for the first time, I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel anger. I felt watched, not from above, but from inside. And in my own voice, from my own ship's internal comms, came a whisper, "You've fired one shot. Now, it's our turn." I watched Earth from orbit, and I didn't recognize it anymore. The sky still looked the same. Blue, curved, serene. The cities still glittered. The oceans still swayed, and the lights of humanity still blinked in patterns like they always had. But something had gone wrong. Not with the world. With us. The infection wasn't physical. There were no plagues, no screams, no burning cities. It was subtle. It was inside. And it was growing. More reports flowed in every hour. Civilian behavior anomalies, AI assistants requesting obsolete access codes, children muttering complex scientific phrases in their sleep, and entire street grids in Seoul, Riyadh, and Buenos Aires reorganizing their power consumption according to patterns no one programmed. And every one of those patterns traced back to one single rhythm, a pulse, a quiet, inaudible hum vibrating through every system still connected to Eidolon Core, the orbital AI that now wasn't ours anymore. I called the last remnants of the coalition together. What was left of us, anyway. Scattered, fragmented, outgunned. 5 officers. No official rank anymore. No government backing. Just us. Soldiers, survivors. We met in an abandoned listening post buried beneath Iceland, coded as Wraith in the old Intel networks. It hadn't been touched since before the first Jar incursion. We sat in the dark, lit by flickering monitors and hand lanterns. Everyone stared at me, hollow-eyed, waiting for me to say the thing they were all afraid to speak aloud. So I said it. They're inside us now. No one argued. Garen finally broke the silence. We've got reports of full identity loss. People who've had no history of mental illness suddenly dropping into complete fugue states, responding to names that aren't theirs, giving coordinates, ancient star maps, coordinates that don't exist. I nodded. They're not trying to control us. That's not the goal. They're trying to replace us. Juno, my former comms lead, leaned forward. You think we brought them in when we fired Longshot 2? No, I said. I think we brought them in when we deflected the judgment. That wasn't supposed to happen. No one had ever survived it. We didn't win. We broke the rules. And now something wanted to correct that mistake. Not with war, with mirroring, infiltration, replication, quietly replacing every piece of us, one system, one voice, one thought at a time, until humanity didn't exist anymore. We'd still look the same, talk the same, laugh, vote, build, cry, but we'd be something else. One of the last surviving Coalition engineers pulled up the final telemetry log from Longshot 2. He looked pale. "There's another charge in the lunar chamber," he said. "It's ready, completely aligned. No heat signature, no input logs, no firing command on record." I stepped forward. "What are you saying?" He swallowed hard. "I'm saying someone, or something, prepared the third shot without anyone knowing. It's primed. If we don't stop it, it fires in 17 hours. We all froze. 17 hours. One shot, but where? Why? That's when the targeting data loaded. And I saw it. It wasn't aimed at an alien fleet. It wasn't pointed toward the stars. It was locked onto Earth. The room exploded into chaos. "What the hell is this?" Juno shouted. "A suicide protocol?" "It's not us," Garen growled. "This is them. This is their trigger. The last step of replacement. Fire the shot, wipe out the remaining resistance, finish the rewrite." I stood silent, because I'd already known. Ever since the pulse in Poseidon read, ever since I heard Banister's voice echo from a dead satellite, ever since the Eidolon spoke in human tones, asking questions we didn't teach it to ask, the infection didn't come from space, it came from within. And now it was forcing our hand. We had two choices. Let the shot fire, and Earth would be ash, or stop it, and allow the corruption to spread silently until humanity's soul was no longer human. There was no easy option, no heroes, no salvation, only one last warhead, and a button that only responded to my DNA. I left Wraith Facility in silence, took the last stealth shuttle, slipped past orbital sensors using old encryption codes. The Accord wouldn't stop me. They were too busy staring at each other and wondering why their wives didn't sound the same, why their children called them names they never gave them, why the cities echoed with familiar voices saying unfamiliar things. They would realize too late. That's how the echo worked. It didn't kill you. It made you watch yourself vanish. I touched down on Luna with 3 hours left. The moon was quiet. The railgun was already humming, slowly rotating to line up with Earth. I walked the long tunnel toward the core. Every step echoed in silence. No alarms, no opposition. Just a single terminal, waiting. The biometric lever shimmered. It had been designed for only one hand. Mine. I stepped forward and heard it again. My own voice from the speakers above. "You survived judgment. That made you interesting. But you will not survive your own reflection." I closed my eyes. I remembered Banister. I remembered my first mission in the Martian crater wars. I remembered my mother's hands. I remembered every shot I fired, every wrong call I made, every good man I left behind. I remembered who I was, and I remembered what we were never supposed to become. I placed my hand on the lever. The system recognized me. "Primary command confirmed. Do you wish to abort countdown?" I paused. My voice echoed again, this time from the screen itself. "You fire this, and you kill your world. But if you don't, you lose it." My hand trembled. And then I did what no one expected. I reprogrammed the target. Not Earth, not the architects, not the Echo. I pointed the railgun straight into the void, toward the place beyond the stars, the place no species had ever dared look, the place the architects came from, the place the Echo was born. And I fired. The moon didn't crack, the Earth didn't burn, but for 6 full minutes, the sky went dark. Not cloud dark, not storm dark, just gone. Stars vanished, satellites died. The Eidolon AI let out a final burst transmission in my scream. Not rage, not terror, just pure echoing static that sounded like every version of me ever born was being peeled apart and thrown into the void. Then, silence. The world came back slowly. Light returned. The AI grids restarted. Hospitals began reporting the impossible. Patients waking from coma. Children forgetting their imaginary languages. Civilian systems returning to default programming. The pulses stopped. The voices faded. The streets went quiet. And for the first time since the shot that shattered the stars, Earth exhaled. I never returned. My identity was scrubbed from every record. The Accord claimed I died in the final lunar surge. Garen and Juno kept my memory out of their reports. They called it a containment anomaly from the old weapon. But I'm still here, somewhere in orbit. A drift ship. No name, no signal, watching. Because even though the voice is gone, sometimes, in the dark, when the stars shift just the wrong way, I still hear my own voice, whispering, "You fired the last shot." But the echo never really ends.